Thank God for a new day. It's Tuesday. We don't say thank God it's Tuesday, but thank God for a new day. Welcome to Business Morning here on Channels Television. I'm Amy John Mekwa, and this is 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversations. Now, let's start with what's going on in the oil space. We can tell you that oil edged up today as the market waited to see if Iraq oil exports will resume, which could ease the supply tightness caused by OPEC Plus cuts, while the faltering Chinese economy continued to undercut the global demand outlook. Brent crude was down 8 cents at $84.38 a barrel, and U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude slipped 8 cents also to $80.04 a barrel. WTI's contract with September expiry was trading 7 cents lower at $80.65 a barrel. Iraq's oil minister Hayyan Abdul Ghani arrived in the Turkish capital Ankara to discuss several issues, including the resumption of oil exports through the Ceyhan oil terminal. A source in the minister's office also said that. And Turkey halted Iraqis 450,000 barrels per day of exports through the northern Iraq-Turkey pipeline on the 25th of March after an arbitration ruling by the International Chamber of Commerce, that's the ICC. More Iraqi crude oil coming onto the market could help alleviate the supply crunch for sour crude as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, OPEC Plus, prolong and deepen production cuts. China's central bank on Monday cut its one-year lending rate only moderately to the disappointment of the market, which had expected more aggressive stimulus steps amid a rapid loss in economic momentum. JP Morgan has been busy, and analysts are estimating that global demand growth for the mobility fuels decelerated to 0.6 million barrels per day year on year for the reference week ending August the 12th. In the grain space now, Chicago wheat futures rose on Tuesday, recouping from some of last session's losses, with a potential decline in yields following hot and dry weather in the United States and Europe underpinning prices. Soybeans and corn fell after a crop tour forecast above average yields in Ohio, easing concerns over supplies. The condition of the U.S. spring wheat crop dropped in the latest week, the government said, and forecasts for hot and dry weather continued in the northern plains this week. The stress on the high-protein spring wheat crop could add to concerns about production shortfalls in key growing areas like Canada and the European Union. European Union's crop monitoring service reduced its forecast for this year's average EU soft wheat, maize and rapeseed yields for a third consecutive month and warns of a significant fall in wheat quality after summer rain. Yesterday was, a day to remember for a lot of Nigerians here, the beginning of a new era, we might say, because almost after the ministers in Nigeria took their oath of office, of course led by President Bola Tinubu, we saw that some of them had already started work, got into their offices and are set to work. And this is how this is captured in this report.
After taking their oaths of office, the newly sworn-in ministers proceed to the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation to receive their certificates of appointment. As the ministers report for duties, they are received by officials of their various ministries. The first task for most of them is to speak on their mandate as members of the Federal Executive Council.
In the next few days, we are going to enroll our plans for you. You're going to have a Ministry of Information and National Orientation that is open, that is transparent, that is also accountable to Nigerians.
Our three ministries intertwined together. We are, as I said to my sister here, Siamese triplets. So whatever we do going forward in the administration, we will make sure we do it in unison and together. I must tell you, I do believe that at this point, Nigeria stands on the precipice of greatness. We have always been a great nation, but we are literally on the precipice of greatness.
We need everybody to serve our country. But most importantly, we need our Minister of Orientation. We need art and culture, and we need the other ministries to collaborate with us, because without them, we cannot sell our country. We need their help.
For the Minister of Labour, the immediate task is to resolve all industrial issues.
On the relationship with organized labor, the government through the ministry shall work closely with the NLC, the TUC, and the affiliates towards not only ensuring that all pending industrial disputes are settled amicably, but also addressing with strong determination the new minimum wage and other palliatives arising from the removal of subsidies.
The Ministry of Agriculture has a food security component as part of its mandate, and the minister, who is accompanied to the reception by Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State, is promising to synergize with the Minister of State to deliver on priority areas in the ministry.
I'm willing to commit 100% to the service of this nation. I think we have a big challenge, but it's not unsurmountable. Our target is not only to secure and feed the country, but also to export food, which we have that potential.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Interior, Mr. Tunji Ojo, who also assumed office, wants the heads of the paramilitary agencies to brace up for the task ahead. The two ministers under the Ministry of Petroleum Resources headed straight to work as they had a meeting with the heads of the agencies under the ministry. They have their work cut out for them.
We'll work by providing intentional and timely interventions to strengthen the entire gas value chain, covering gas exploration, production, gas distribution, and gas consumption, as well as gas pricing.
I'm here with one agenda, and that agenda is increase production. Increase production on a sustainable basis. And as a quick boy, I'm here to provide the leadership so that we can go to the creeks and resolve all the problems that are bedeviling our production.
Clearly, the expectations of the citizens is to see how these men and women will administer policies and harmonize same for the growth of the different sectors and the nation.
So that's it, ministers set to work, and of course Nigerians are very expectant. Let's hear from the special advisor to the president on media, Mr. Ajorin Gilale, to tell us some of the first steps we should be expecting from the ministers. Hi, Mr. Gilale, thank you for your time. Good morning.
Good morning to you, my dear sister, and good morning to all of our viewers.
Yeah, so I guess the first place to start would be congratulations. We've been waiting for this for a while, and now we have the ministers, and expectations are really high. As you know, there are so many needs in the country at this time. But what should be the first steps or expectations from these ministers?
Certainly, it is understandable that the expectations of Nigerians are high. If you look at the allocation of portfolios to members of the new Federal Executive Council, you would appreciate the extent to which His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu really had done his due diligence, trying to ensure that the shoes are on the right feet. And this is why, for example, if you look at the new Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Alhaji Ahmed Musa Dangiwa, you would find that he had a very successful 5-year term leading the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, in which he instituted reforms that unlocked resources for the further advancement of financing for mortgages across Nigeria. We recognize now that as Minister of Housing, as an example, that is going to be a point of emphasis for the president to deliver on housing access for Nigerians, and he was very determined to ensure that whoever was there was someone who had the requisite experience and track record of excellent performance to be able to drive that ministry. And that's just one example. If you look at the Ministry of Innovation, Communication and Digital Economy, you have there Dr. Bosun Tijani, who is known as having founded the largest co-creation innovation hub in Africa, with over 17 different projects across the continent, across offices in countries including Rwanda, Namibia, Nigeria, and others. So the president has gone out of his way to ensure that across the sectors, the ministers that have been entrusted with these responsibilities have not just the formal education to back up their new tasks, but also a career-long progression and track record to show that indeed they will be in a position to perform. And look, this particular president is well known to be a micromanager to a good extent. He is not someone to overlook a non-performance. He is someone who is going to be on the backs of every minister on a consistent basis, making sure that they meet time-based benchmarks of performance that he has set before them. So I think Nigerians are very much right to have high expectations of the new cabinet, and I can assure you this morning that His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu thinks of nothing else than ensuring that his cabinet delivers on the renewed hope mandate.
Yeah, but I'm so happy to hear you mention the word benchmarks, and I expect something like timeline will also follow suit, and the issue of targets. You know, those are things that I think is not very common with us in Nigeria, setting a target and a timeline for ministries and ensuring that if the ministers do not meet up to that, then something is done about that. But just before you talk about that, you did talk about shoes on the right feet. But there are some other ministries that, you know, some Nigerians have concerns. For instance, when you look at the newly created one, which gets a lot of applause from industry players, the marine and blue economy. I mean, they've been asking for it for a very long time. And so having it now, of course, they're very happy about it. But when we look at the minister now, how much background does he have? We knowing that that's a technical area. Another one would be aviation, as we know that the minister there, we know him to be in the legal profession. You know, and so people are asking, these are technical areas. How will these ministers deliver, especially in the short term, seeing that these are areas that are there? I mean, we don't know them to be used to those areas.
Yeah, thank you so much. If you look at, I think sometimes there's a tendency on the part of some public analysts, certainly I'm not referring to you, to oversimplify the general, you know, backgrounds of some certain nominees. And I want to be very precise in what I mean by that. If you look at the new Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, His Excellency, the immediate past governor of Osun State, Adeboyega Oyetola, what you'd find that he had decades worth of experience in the insurance industry. A major part of that, eventually even you know, beginning his own, starting up his own insurance company that has gone on to be very successful, it dealt quite extensively with the shipping industry, for example. So the notion that there has not been some sort of a link between some of the nominees and the various sectors that they will now be overseeing, I think it's a bit overblown. The truth of the matter is that that's on the one hand. On the other hand, you mentioned the Minister of Aviation, you know, Barrister Festus Keyamo, senior advocate of Nigeria. Yes, it may be true that he has not flown a plane. He's not a captain, as it were, in that sense. But I think anyone who understands kind of the minutiae of the aviation industry recognizes the central role that policy and regulation plays in the effective you know, operation of that industry. We talk about aviation safety, flight safety, civil aviation safety. All of this has to do with how strong your legal foundations are and the extent to which they are being, that there are you know, effective regulations crafted to oversight that sector. I don't think there's any better legal mind in the cabinet to be able to oversee any review of the policy regulations that will be undergirding the aviation sector moving forward. And again, I would also say this, it's not just a matter of professional background. That's part of it, but the other part of it is personality, who you are and what your tendencies are. Everyone knows that Barrister Festus Keyamo is a no-nonsense individual who is not going to keep quiet or look the other way if something wrong is going on. He's going to speak to it, and not only speak to it, but now he has the power to be able to ensure that any sharp practices in the aviation industry, all the different things that we hear about in terms of scams here or scams there, or inefficiency in our airports, he's going to be the kind of minister that will be going through the airports, on unscheduled visits, making sure that FAN is kept on its toes, making sure that the NCAA is not falling short in terms of its regulatory responsibilities. We believe he's going to do a fantastic job, and we believe that his legal profession, his legal background is going to suit him very well. And I would also note, just very quickly, that if you look at the Minister of Economic Planning and Budget, you would find that His Excellency, the immediate past governor of Kebbi State, Atiku Bagudu, not only once worked in the Central Bank of Nigeria, has his first degree in finance, has his second degree, a master's from the prestigious Ivy League University, Columbia University in New York, in economic management. And obviously had also worked in the World Bank. So this is who is going to be manning the economic planning sector for the country. Across the board, you are going to find how the professional backgrounds and the academic backgrounds of our nominees and now fully sworn-in ministers will suit the agenda of Mr. President very well in terms of policy execution and implementation.
All right, Mr. Ngilale, just before we let you go, let's talk about the CNG initiative that the president announced last week. How does that work? How can we access it? How is it going to help, to buffer some of the hardship at this time?
Yes, so the CNG initiative is a very important one. The Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative that has been established by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is chaired by His Excellency the Chief of Staff, Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, and essentially is going to be rolling out in the near term. 11,500 new CNG fueled vehicles focused in on mass transit systems across all states of the Federation. We recognize that at a time when energy costs are going up, when a time when our people are hurting from rising food costs and inflation, that dealing with the issue of rising energy costs is fundamental, which is why the President put in place this initiative targeting the transportation modes that really affect the bulk of our masses. When you talk about the bulk of our people on the lower income ladder, lower income side of the economic ladder in the country, being able to ensure that we can provide CNG fueled buses and the like that would crash the cost from PMS fueled buses at about 620 naira per liter on average. You're now looking at about 250 naira per liter on average for CNG. That's going to have a massive impact on the ability of the everyday Nigerian going to work and back, going to market and back, using mass transit across our states. So that's going to do that in the immediate term. In addition to that, we're going to be immediately rolling out 55,000 new CNG conversion kits for existing PMS vehicles to be able to further accelerate the process of conversion and transition from PMS to CNG. But I need to note that it's one thing to deal with the demand side of the CNG equation. You also have to deal with the supply side, which is why His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been able to, through the NNPCL, strike a deal with NIPCO, which effectively is going to roll out 56 new CNG filling stations across all states of the Federation within the next 16 months. 21 new stations, CNG filling stations within the next 9 months, and then 35 new filling stations, CNG stations between April 2020 2024 and April 2025, which essentially takes us to his midterm, of the midterm of his first term in office. So we're dealing with the supply side. We're also dealing with the demand side. We're also going to be rolling out an exemption on customs duties as well as VAT exemptions on all importation of CNG conversion kits to further accelerate and cheapen the process of CNG conversion for families across Nigeria. And that is the president's focus at this time.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Glinali. I think one thing that gladdens my heart more is the timeline. I mean, when you give these promises, you give it with timeline, so we can also follow up and know if we are making it or not, and we'll certainly do that. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Mr. Ajurin Glinali, the Special Advisor to the President on Media.
A privilege to be with you. Thank you.
So we're still staying on economic issues now, and joining us to take the conversation further is the outgoing Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Mr. Laoye Jayola, joins us virtually now. He's in the same Abuja with Ngelale. I guess they will meet at some point and shake hands and all of that. Mr. Jayola, thank you for your time. And well, I guess we can only take it up where Mr. Ngelale has stopped, talking about the ministers and talking about the CNG initiative. Okay, so you saw the ministers yesterday. We've heard the SA now tell us a balance to with some of those concerns. Do you have any concerns, or what are your expectations as the ministers settle in?
Well, again, unlike most policy analysts, I have a different slant to these discussions. We practice a presidential system of government, and the buck stops on the president's desk. The ministers will be as effective as the president allowed them to be. But more importantly, our challenge in Nigeria is implementation of policies. And therefore, even as we look at ministers, we must be able to look at the capacity of the civil service to implement whatever it is that we have to do. So we can have the best of ministers, very qualified. If the bureaucracy of government does not allow them, and there is no coordination among ministries, we're going to have challenges. So my view is, Mr. President, Nigerians voted for you, and we're going to demand accountability from you. We know you're going to use our ministers to execute. We applaud them. But the civil service should ensure that these ministers work. But my advice for the ministers will be, please don't guard jobs. Minister means servants. Please be truly servants. Be accessible. Talk amongst yourselves. Unless you meet the yearnings of Nigerians, you then will not have performed. And given the critical time that we are in as a country, it is important that all ministers should hit the ground running and start delivering. I congratulate them. There are expectations from Nigerians of them, and I hope that they will deliver.
Yeah, so one thing that Mr. Glinali, as I told him, talked about is giving timelines. You know, you talked about the issue of implementation, which everybody knows is a common challenge in the country. We have beautiful policies on paper. We talk about them, we can explain them, but when it comes to implementing it. So, I mean, looking at the timelines, the issue of, he also said that the presidents will be watching to look at targets, and ministers who don't meet up with that, you know, will have to face some kind of music. Do you think that is saying that is a good enough motivation, you know, to push the ministers to work?
Timelines are good, but what actions do you take when somebody defaults on meeting timelines? It's very important. I was listening to the president's inauguration of a task force team, and they were told what they needed to submit in 30 days, what they would do in 6 months, and all like that and that. So it's important that, look, this timelines are good. So what do? I'll give you a very simple example. Our gateway is our airport, Murtala Airport. I still don't understand where somebody else look at your passport and that person stamps your passport. These are things that I believe maybe They said it's an ICT matter. Why can't we then have a collaboration between the Aviation Ministry and and solve this problem and make us look good? For me, deploying technology to most of the work we do, and e-governance platform has been there for ages. So we don't need to set up another committee, pick it up, and begin to let's implement. So these are the small things that some of us will want done almost immediately. And honestly, there are a number of things that if we hit our ground running and work on, it will give us results. So timelines are good, but what is important is what are the infractions for non-performance?
And then yesterday, JP Morgan gave us another something to worry about, especially for the president, the ministers. You know, they did say that predict a weaker economy for Nigeria, especially our foreign reserve, which we know is already a challenge. You know, this is another big one for not just the ministers connected to the economy, but I mean, almost all of them will have something to contribute to this, especially the president anyways.
Well, our external reserve, no doubt, is worrisome. We all know that. We didn't all know in full until we saw the publication, right? What's important, I think we need to do is, first and foremost, let's bring transparency to this matter. Let there be firm disclosure. Let not be accepting blessings. A lot of work is being done in ensuring that we begin to produce as much as we should produce in terms of our oil export. If we work on our oil exports, and we begin to have more accretion to reserve, I mean, that will be good. But more importantly, if we are able to have clear signal regarding policy choices that the government wants to do, then we'll be able to still bring in investors to this country. Once we deal with security, the fundamentals of the Nigerian economy is very strong. Investors will come if there is clarity. I think we need to begin to put clarity to our, we know the fiscal side, we're seeing who is there, what's going to happen on our monetary side. Once we have clarity around what we want to do, we'll then be able to bring in some money. I must let you know that we cannot produce our way out. We need both production locally and we need investors to come from without. And if that happens, you know, my worry about I worry a bit about these ratings, but I know they change from time to time. If you do the right thing, they will change it. So let's do the right thing so that they can change it.
What would the right thing be, especially when you mention transparency?
I just told you the right thing now. Clarity of policy. Let's know who and who is there. Let's not flip-flop. Let's be very clear. Secondly, let us even use technology to cover all the tracks. There are so many losses, many revenues that are not accruing to our reserve. I mean, what does it take to police our oil rigs? Technology exists today, you can police effectively. So the matter that somebody is stealing oil as if they are carrying it, and it's just transparency issue. So let's get security to do a lot of security and allow the security people to work rather than have too much conflicting interests there and there. But more importantly, let us work in a coordinated fashion. An idea of I am going this way, you are going to, it's about Nigeria. Let's all work together. And this one area I'm going to challenge even our state governments. And the last time I spoke to the press, I did tell them that I don't believe palliative should be only from the center. The state governments should be doing palliative. And I'm glad they are releasing palliative. And if you look at it, it varies from one state to another. Nigerians just need to be appeased, and we want to implore our state governors to join her and make sure that whatever is due to the citizen, they give it to them. But transparency, openness, clarity of policy, security are things we can do very shortly.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Laoye Jayola, the outgoing Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. We appreciate your thoughts and perspective this morning.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Well, it's our country. Nigeria is ours, so we have to keep talking about the issues and not just talking, but also implementing. Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll head to the commodity space. To stay with us. You're welcome back. Still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. It's Commodities time now, and joining us for that conversation is Dr. Adesola Sumoni. Joins us from Reading. Is a senior analyst, financial derivatives company. Hi, Doctor. Good morning, and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Ine. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, so we see a lot of factors hitting one way or the other on global oil, from the China demand and economy to the U.S. reserve and all of that. And okay, so we saw it hit about over 85, came down to 80, now to 85. What's going on really?
Thank you for your question, Ine. So like you mentioned, oil prices, many factors are driving oil prices at the moment. One big factor is China. China's economy has not grown as expected since they removed their COVID-19 restrictions. So the economy has performed weaker than expected. We're seeing weak spending. We are seeing weak a property crisis, real estate crisis in the country, and all of this is affecting oil demand. In addition to that, instead of importing more oil, what China is doing, they are drawing down on inventories, on their oil inventories, and that is weighing on oil prices on the demand side. We are also seeing from OPEC Plus production cuts, stronger production cuts are coming from OPEC Plus. We saw Saudi Arabia saying that they're going to produce only around 9 million barrels of oil per day, which is effectively reducing their production by around 1 million barrels per day through to September, and that is supporting prices. We're also seeing at the end of the summer driving season, which is expected to end next week, so that demand is also going to go offline. So these are some of the factors driving oil prices at the moment, and going forward, we expect two key factors to drive oil prices going forward. One is China's economy. We are seeing the People's Bank of China try to implement some measures to stimulate the economy, to boost consumer spending and economic growth. So we expect that to affect oil demand going forward. Also, the possibility of another interest rate hike is expected to weigh on sentiment, weigh on economic growth, as well as demand for oil. So those are two factors I think are going to drive oil demand going forward.
And you mentioned the OPEC Plus cuts, and we know that Saudi Arabia and Russia are leading that. Now, these two countries are also involved in BRICS. The summit starts today. While Saudi Arabia is not yet a member, we learned they have applied to become a member. What impact do you think? I mean, if this, and Nigeria is also their vice president is there, so if all these oil producing countries come up to BRICS, what impact do you think it will have on supply and prices in the global space?
I think membership of BRICS do not really drive oil prices to my knowledge. I think, obviously OPEC Plus in particular are trying to keep oil prices, steady, elevated to some extent because of revenues for oil revenues in their own country. Meanwhile, other countries like the US also want to keep oil prices lower, right? So, but what we are seeing is OPEC Plus, for instance, that they are implementing sharper production cuts to keep the market tight. Right. We're also seeing Russia selling their oil at discounted prices to Asia, to try to also get some revenue from that. So I think OPEC still has the big driver. OPEC is still a big driver of oil prices at the moment, and I think their production cuts are still keeping the market tight and undersupplied.
All right, now gas seems to be receiving more attention in Nigeria. We're happy about that. Now we have the Minister of State for gas. Good news for us, but we see globally liquefied natural gas is surging.
This is the price in Europe in particular. So what is happening is we are seeing one of the key export terminals in Australia. Workers in that export terminal in Australia are threatening to strike, citing poor poor working condition, low wages, etc. And this export terminal is quite significant because it accounts for around 4% of global natural gas production. Now, if the threat of strike materializes, it means that it's going to disrupt global natural gas production. Now, while Australia does not particularly supply natural gas to Europe, if the threat of strike materializes, then the buyers of Australian natural gas would then compete with Europe, with the EU for alternative suppliers of gas. But it's important to note that even though we are seeing EU gas prices trend upwards at the moment, I think it is quite temporary because its fundamentals are solid. Only on Saturday, over the weekend, the EU met its target for natural gas storage ahead of the winter, and this was 2 months in advance. I think currently the EU storage is around 91% full. So I think that is positive. They have enough supplies for the winter, and so whatever happens in Australia, I think should not really push gas prices in Europe too much.
Yeah, well, we hope that's the case. But let's see what else is happening in the commodities space, cocoa and other commodities. What's happening to them?
For cocoa, currently we are seeing the price of cocoa trend a little bit downwards, but the outlook is we're seeing the price of cocoa trend downwards, but the balance of the risks are downwards, because if you look at from the supply side, we are seeing weather conditions really threaten production in West Africa. If you look at big producers like Ivory Coast, like Ghana, like Nigeria, Cameroon, all of them have supply constraints, which is reducing their production as well as their exports. We have, in Ghana in particular, the black pod disease is reduced their harvest for this marketing year by around 24%. Also in Ivory Coast, we are seeing black pod disease. Also, I was seeing lack of fertilizer due to the Ukraine-Russia war, also constrained their output. In Nigeria, we are seeing similar situation as well. But the demand side, we are seeing some demand, but we are seeing some positive demand. I think year on year, the demand for cocoa by the National Confectionaries Association showed a 10% increase year on year as at I think the end of June. So that is some positive news on the demand side. But on the supply side, we are seeing supply constraints, and that is likely to keep prices trending upwards in the near to medium term. In the domestic commodities market, we are seeing a mixed bag really for some commodities like tomatoes, peppers, palm oil, and gari. We are seeing the prices trend downwards because of the harvest season, which is quite positive. But on the other hand, we are still seeing some prices trend upwards. If you look at the price of rice, the price of flour, the price of beans and onions, all of them are still trending upwards at this time. So it's a mixed bag.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Adesola Sumoni, for your time and analysis this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a breather. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. Still Business Morning here on Channels Television, and we're heading to the markets now. The NGX. We saw Will Ibong last night on the stock market report getting also excited because of a recovery at the NGX. And Anita is here to give us more details on that. Hi, Anita. Good morning.
Good morning, Ini.
You come bearing good news, I see.
Exactly. A rebound. And that was a wonderful way to start.
And a strong one, too, yeah.
Yeah. More than 0.5%. And that's especially when you consider last week we had 4 trading sessions that were in the red, profit-taking, no doubt. Yeah. And then at the same time, we managed to...
A mild recovery on Friday.
Yeah, on Friday. But of course, Airtel was the main dampening effect on the market. But this time, Airtel, the big guys didn't really do it. It was Boer Foods. But I'll be giving you that details just in a split second from now. So this is how the market turned out for the start of the week. On Monday, 0.74%, more than half of a percent increase. And then in value term, take a look at your board there, 262 billion naira. And then we're back at the 35 trillion naira level At the same time, the 65,000 points for the all-share index also back on the block there, thanks to the gains recorded by 31 gainers. We had a very positive market breadth. At the same time, month-to-date gain has been rebounded to about 1.3%, while year-to-date is about 27.2%. As you can see on your board there, it started the year at 51,595.66, but there we are back at the 65,000 points. Now, let's take a look at the sectoral performance. Kind of a mixed picture there, but the greens have it, particularly on the consumer goods counter. Like I mentioned earlier, Boa Foods made that magic effect on the market, and you can see also the insurance subsector, very small there, but it had a very large impact in terms of sectoral performance. Now, let's take a look at the activity chart. Not a good picture, as you can see there, more than 50% drop on the volume as well as the value, and then for the deals, more than nearly 7% drop on that market. Now, to give us more details about the stock market for yesterday and what to expect as we speak, and for the close of Tuesday's trading session, let's speak to Onye Idume Igariwe, equity trader at Stanbic IBTC Stockbrokers. Thank you for joining us, Onye.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Niti. So like you mentioned, yesterday we saw the ASI gain about 74 basis points. Yeah, we still see some profit taking in the market, and we still see some investors staying on the sidelines. The banking index still closed negative because we saw some of that profit taking in some of the names like the Zenith, Fidelity Bank, Jais as well. In those names, we saw the prices slightly drop there. The consumer index was, however, the opposite because we saw it gain there. Boa Foods, Dank Sugar, Indbury, we saw that appreciation in price. But generally, we still say that we see more of crosses driving activities. That's block trades being the main activities that drove trades yesterday in the market. So it was fairly quiet overall in the market for yesterday, with mixed participation as well in our space.
Okay, so last week we didn't mention, but over the weekend when we had the markets update, the markets wrap up, we saw MTN listing about 641 million shares arising from scrip dividend, and then at the same time we also saw Flour Mills listed some bonds. Can you give us more details about this, and then what's happening at the stock market at the moment?
Oh, okay. Now, so for the MTN, yes, if you recall, sometime last year, when they declared their dividend for the based on the final result, they gave the investors the opportunity to decide if they want to be paid in cash or they rather have shares instead. So with that, they decided on a price, what they call the MTN reference price, based on trading days. They got the average for some select days, and so they arrived at the price. That reference price was 232.68. So for those that filled the form then and said that, oh, I do not want to receive cash, I rather have shares, what they did was that they converted that into shares for them based on that reference price and then credited their CSS account. So that means they will now have more shares in their account. So in case they decide they just want to keep it long term, or they decide that they want to actually take profit from what has happened. Though generally now in the market has just begun. Not much activity has happened so far in terms of like the volume and value that's traded. So far, ASI is still positive, but it's still too early to judge how the market is still going to go. But if you look at it based on what we've seen from last week and this week, then we still expect this fairly quiet market with mixed sentiments. Also to recall that some of the names are expecting their results and they are yet to release it. Some of the other banking names like the GT, the Zenith, the Stanbic, although some of them have already filed and probably even published to the exchange that there will be a delay. Something like for names like Stanbic and Zenith, they already notified their exchange that would expect a delay in that result, but on or before September 14th, that's for Zenith. September 29th for Stanbic would see that result release. So we expect that more activities will come into the market as well once those results begin to file in terms of interim dividends and other things that could be attractive to the investors.
So thank you so much, Onye. That analysis, very nice. And of course, our eyes are always on the market. That's Onye Idume Igariwe, equity trader at Stanbic IBTC Stockbrokers, bringing us up to speed with what's happening at the NGX. Now, let's move from there to the bonds, to the fixed income market, and we're starting first with the Treasury bills market, which you see here. We saw it traded with mixed sentiment, but at the same time with a bullish tilt. Now, the most activity was on the 25th of July 2024 paper for next year, which are 2 deals, and then it was a major contributor to 5 total number of deals there at 3.35 billion naira. Moving over to the bonds market space, we saw a kind of a bearish activity there because, of course, we saw investors demand the January 2026 paper. It fell by 14 basis points, and the June 2053 paper, which fell by 9 basis points. But take a look at your board there. The 21st of June 2038 paper, it had one deal, but the biggest deals attracted was on the 21st of June 2033 paper, and it was a major contributor to 11 total number of deals carried out there. For the OMO market, we saw average yield there paired by 1 basis point to about 11%, but take a look at your board there. 12th of December 2023 paper later this year, it had the highest number of deals. And then, of course, for what to expect, we will be expecting that tomorrow the central bank will be rolling over more than 300 billion naira worth of maturities at the NTB primary market auction tomorrow.
Oh, so you have your hands already full for tomorrow?
My hands are full already.
All right. Thank you so much, Anita.
Pleasure.
Well, let's move over to London now, where Tenny Ola is joining us. And Tenny, good morning. I know you guys have some reasons to smile now because your inflation is tapering. We see your food inflation, especially at the supermarket, have tapered. So congratulations to you guys here. We're solving our problems. We'll meet you where you are. Another good thing here is that the big firm bosses' pay rose by 16%. You know, and I'm wondering, did it trickle down to the staff, or is it just the big guys that got this pay raise?
Hi, Annie. I think we all know the answer to that. It's complicated, but it's a no. It didn't trickle down as much as it should at all, especially when you look at the impact of the cost of living crisis on many households and workers. What's interesting also is taking a look at the CEOs who saw the biggest pay rises. The CEO of drugs company AstraZeneca collected £15.3 million, up from 13.9 the previous year, while the boss of the arms manufacturer BAE Systems was the second highest earner with £10.7 million. On average, bosses saw an increase of £500,000, and that's clearly, you know, the impact of the pandemic and, of course, the war in Ukraine, as the UK races to provide weapons for Ukraine and shore up its own defenses. Not surprisingly, the bosses of the oil and gas companies, BP and Shell, are also among the top earners, also as a result of the Ukraine war. Of course, people have criticized these earnings as extreme, as workers' wages on average have failed to keep up with rising prices over the past year. And just to leave you with a fun fact, Inni, and help you understand the criticism following the news, while reading up on this story, I found out that, you know, the average CEO makes more in less than 3 days than the average UK worker makes in a whole year.
What an unfair world we live in. Very unfair, Teniola. Well, I guess my dream now is just to be a CEO, because I have to get there. I have to make this money.
Know, it's everyone's dream.
It's everyone's dream. So what else are we expecting this week from the UK?
Well, not a busy week in terms of economic data, but figures just released today shows that government borrowing came in lower than expected last month, despite a hit from the highest debt interest payments ever seen for the month of July. So we're likely to see reactions following that. In terms of company news, we're expecting an update on the future of the bargain retailer Wilko, which collapsed into administration 2 weeks ago. Administrators PwC had given last Wednesday for buyers to submit initial offers, and with over 12,000 jobs on the line, the outcome of this is being closely watched. We're also expecting the outcome of the UK Competition and Markets Authority's review of Microsoft's new proposed deal to acquire video game company Activision after it blocked an initial $75 billion takeover proposal earlier this year. So there's been a lot of back and forth with that this year, so we're likely to see more on that. And lastly, Inni, we're also back to status quo. More strikes are expected this week from rail workers, which is likely to affect people heading to Gatwick Airport to catch flights. Senior doctors belonging to the British Medical Association have strikes also planned this week. But we've seen some of these disputes with striking workers, most recently teachers being resolved before planned industrial actions. So as negotiations continue, there's still hope that they might not go ahead as planned.
Yeah, well, we hope so too. But Tenny, when you hear the numbers or the take home of the CEOs, and those down the ladder will be like,
it's more motivation for strikes. Yeah,
exactly. All right, Tenny, we'll talk to you in the afternoon. I think those numbers, those borrowing numbers of the government, we'll talk more on it for Business Incorporated.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Annie.
Yeah. So if you like the color of my jacket, then you certainly like the color of crypto on the board. But it's not what investors like to see. But this is what we've had for a couple of weeks now. Bitcoin is still down 26. Not up to 27, down 0.29, worse than yesterday, 0.47.5 for dominance. Ethereum has joined yesterday, recovered a little bit, but we did tell you that was very minimal. It wasn't something that I'm going to stay. So it's down almost 1% this morning. Let's look at the index now. My heart is beating. So you have 37 today. We're still within the range of very heavy extreme fear in the market at this time. That's what we have there. Let's look at the other numbers. There you have it. Bitcoin obviously down. Ethereum is down. Everything is down at this time. See the top gainers and top losers. That will give us a little bit of feel. The top gainers, I don't know what AKT is doing yesterday. I think it was about 8% yesterday. Today is 9%, more than 9%. But the rest are like 3% and less than 1%. But one thing that's making the news in the crypto space this morning is Shiba Inu unveiling their world paper. And of course, this comes after a whole long wait and all of that for the SHIB community all over the world. And they called an abridged version SHIB paper. And they have some plans and benefits according to them. They say the state's foundation scripts are called the Great Canine Code, and readers will be introduced to 22 principles to make up the SHIB community. To be a part of it, you have 22 principles of SHIB, 15 crypto problems that have been solved by SHIB State, and 10 global problems that have been solved by SHIB State. So don't worry, we're going to talk more about this. The director has told me it's time to go. But we'll have time tomorrow to talk about the SHIB community, what this means to investors and potential investors into the SHIB community, and what it means to you. So we'll have to say thank you so much for being a part of Business Morning today, a second time this week. It's 3 more to go. You don't know what it's a package for you, so you don't want to miss it tomorrow at 10 a.m. But before then, do join me at 1:30 p.m. Business Incorporated will give you update from the world of business. One of that will be that conversation with Tenny Ola from our UK studio. So do join me then. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Have a great day.